A new bill in Texas has just been signed into law by Governor Greg Abbott of Texas. State Bill 2420, and this bill specifically now requires app stores on mobile devices, on your phones, to require age verification for age restricted content, such as applications and other content that app stores provide. This particular bill is actually, the details of this are important and need to be gone through because there's a lot of downsides and there's a lot of upsides, and there's going to be a lot of reporting on this over the coming days and weeks that I think are going to miss a little bit of both the upsides and the downsides. So I wanted to talk it through with all of you. Yes, I've read the bill and I'm going to walk you through some of the high levels that I think are going to get missed. And I also want to talk very briefly about some significant hacks that have occurred, data breaches that have occurred that we've just learned about over the last couple of days. In fact, nearly 30 million user accounts have been leaked in just two massive data breaches that we've learned about just in the last couple of days. And all of this is interrelated and all of this needs to be considered. And so I wanted to walk you through some of this now. First, I'm going to start by just reading what I posted here over to X because it's brilliant and the words are important. Texas State Bill 2420 is now law, requiring mobile app stores to verify user age for age-restricted content. Expect this to be incredibly controversial and cause a lot of commotion in the tech industry over the coming months, especially as there are proposed laws in other states which are similar, which will effectively force all app stores to implement support. And specifically, I'm talking about there's a bill in Louisiana that is very similar to this Texas bill and has a good chance of passing and getting signed into law in Louisiana. And there's a couple others in a few other states as well with varying levels of likelihood of being signed. Once these get signed, which the Texas one has, the clock begins to tick for tech companies who provide app stores. We're talking mostly Google and Microsoft and Apple here, but there are a few others as well, to begin the process of requiring age verification for age-restricted content, not for all content, just age-restricted content. But that's going to need to be a thing. And once it's required for states as large as Texas, which have cities in it like Dallas, Fort Worth, and Houston, some of the largest metropolitan areas in the United States, I mean, just millions and millions of customers, the likelihood is those pieces of functionality are likely going to need to be rolled out across the country and possibly beyond just the country, just to make life easier for the tech companies. So this is going to have a pretty profound impact, whether we like it or not, on everything. I continue. Many oppose this bill, and I think for many obvious reasons. Expect people like the Electronic Frontier Foundation, the EFF, and others to loudly denounce it over the days ahead. Now, I should point out that the EFF, and I've pointed this out before, they denounce absolutely anything and everything if that bill, if that project, if that piece of software is about keeping kids away from adult material, the EFF denounces it. It doesn't matter. They never provide fixes for the problems they see. They simply denounce it outright because it's weird. It's really weird that the EFF seems really pro kids seeing adult material. It's strange because, again, they don't provide solutions. They just attack anything that would stop a kid from seeing something adult. So it's bizarre. There is one section of this bill which its opponents will not likely mention, a section which undermines, if it's mentioned, most of the attacks on the bill itself. Right? And this is very, very, very important here. So I'm going to quote the summary of that section here so that you actually stand a chance of seeing it, because I guarantee you the EFF, when they do their coverage of this bill and attack it, they're not going to probably be talking about this particular section. It's a very important section. I'm just going to read it here. This is the summary provided by the bill makers, and it is accurate for what the actual text of the bill says. Quote, the bill mandates that developers delete personal data after age verification and prohibits misrepresentation or unauthorized sharing of user data. Violations of these provisions are considered deceptive trade practices, and the law provides additional legal remedies, end quote. In other words, app stores will not be allowed to retain things like a photo of your ID, right? This is already occurring. I want to be very clear about this. There are already companies that take photo ID for the purposes of age verification and retain it. That is already occurring. And there is a problem in that there is not law currently until now that says that those companies need to not retain those images of your government ID, your driver's license, your passport, etc. So we've seen multiple hacks and data breaches now where that information has been exposed. Just recently, this happened with Coinbase. Coinbase was a little different, but Coinbase was storing photo of government ID. They got hacked, they got breached, and now a hacker was holding them ransom and holding those government ID of millions of people hostage. It's not a good thing, right? That's a terrifying thing. So there's been a problem that up until now, there hasn't been good law that forced companies to not hold on to that data, right? Because the more companies hold on to an ever increasing amount of data, the more those companies are targets for hacks and data breaches from the inside and all other such things. In fact, a large portion, and this is important, a large portion of this bill is focused on protecting user data and privacy at a level significantly above what previous laws require. And I'm not talking about previous laws relating to, age verification or protecting children online. No, I'm talking about in general. This is quite possibly one of the most stringent laws in terms of data privacy that I have ever seen. The requirements for this law really do require that the companies doing these age verifications for these app stores instantly delete it. As soon as age verification is complete, they cannot retain a huge amount of the information that was required to verify that information. Now, will they comply with that? That's a reasonable concern. But this law goes in depth into that, listing out specific legal consequences for the companies should they fail to delete and remove the data that they obtain in the process of verification of age. This goes further for protecting privacy in this regard than any law I've seen in the United States to date, at least in terms of bills that have actually passed. So this law, and this is really, really critically important. This law is a win for personal privacy in that regard. And it's a win for the online safety of minors. I mean, it just is. It requires age verification, and before it didn't. So that's a win if you're looking at it from that point of view. If you're not worried about that point of view, I understand, great, whatever. But if you're worried about that point of view, it's a win. Now, both issues, protecting what minors see online and the maintenance of your personal privacy online are improved significantly with this bill. What's fascinating is that opponents of this law will frame it as an attack on privacy. That's fascinating to me because it's not really an attack on privacy. Now, it is, if you, like me, are skeptical of the ability of these companies to process the data in a secure way, yeah, you have red flags. Red flags are going up all over the place right now. Definitely, I have concerns there. If you have concerns of the companies actually following through on removing personal data that is no longer required, you know what? Yeah, that's a reasonable thing to be concerned about. Do I trust the big tech companies? Not as far as I can throw them. I can't throw them very far. I just can't. Not only am I weak, but they're large and heavy. So what are we talking about here? The key to all of this, in my mind, is the fact that in this law, they specifically lay out that there are, in law, significant and multiple legal consequences for simply failing to delete irrecoverably personal data in age verification, which means, and if you just kind of think it through practically here, that means the removal of other data that would be used in age verification, but that these companies are already storing unnecessarily. So in the end, these companies, and we're talking Google, Apple, and many others, will end up having to store less of your personal data than they currently do before this law passes. Now, in my mind, this law does not go far enough in terms of what data needs to not be permanently stored by these companies. It needs to go much, much further. But the fact that it goes as far as it does is a win. It is a win. We should take the win here. But yet, some people will attack this as a violation of privacy. That's fascinating. That's really fascinating. So there's a few possibilities here. The first is that people just simply don't understand the details of this law, right? They'll read a headline promoted by the EFF or some other organization. The leftist activists out there hate this law in general, but there's a lot of libertarians that dislike this law as well, and I understand why. Because the initial gut reaction here, when we're talking about any sort of ID verification online, is how is this going to be abused? How does this potentially sacrifice my personal privacy and safety going forward? I mean, instantly, red flags, right? I get it. But the way this law is crafted is requiring these companies to come up with systems in place where they can verify to authorities and to users that their information has been deleted from their systems. That's a win. Honestly, if that was a law all by itself, forget the age verification stuff. If they just had that portion of the law, that these companies could no longer store certain types of information that could be used for age verification, and they had to delete it, I'd vote for that law. I'd vote for any senator or congressman or anyone that was voting for that law. That's a good law. That's a good thing for me, because less overall personal data being stored by these large corporations is a win. So I overwhelmingly, exorbitantly support State Bill 2420, because regardless of what you think of the age verification processes that may become in place, and it should be clear, the state is not telling the tech companies how to do it. They're simply telling the tech companies that they have to adhere to the law. They cannot distribute things that are already would be classified as age-restricted materials, meaning you couldn't go into a convenience store and buy them if you were 14 years old, right? So they're just simply enforcing the laws as they stand in app stores on mobile devices, and that those big tech companies providing those app stores can have to delete enough of that data so that individuals are put in significantly less risk for loss of personal privacy than currently exists. So I support the law. Absolutely, I do. It's not a perfect law. If you really want to sit down and have me line item the criticisms of the law, I absolutely will. But overall, it's a net benefit for both privacy and online safety for kids, so it's a win. I don't see an issue there. It should be entirely possible for these tech companies to pull off exactly what's in the law, and they have some time to do it. They don't even have to have this implemented until sometime next year. So they've got lots of time to get this figured out, ironed out, and get it down pat. should not be a problem. If it is, there's another problem. Now, on unrelated news, unrelated news, there have been two breaches that we just learned about. And this is all related because we're talking about personal data that's currently stored that people are getting. So over the last few days, we've learned about 29.3 million people, give or take, who have had their account data breached and leaked in two specific massive operations. And we're talking about a huge amount of things here. I'm going to show you. This comes from Have I Been Pwned? Great website. So on October 2024, so this last October, the French ISP Free suffered a data breach, which was subsequently posted for sale and later leaked publicly. The data included 14 million unique email addresses, along with names, physical addresses, phone numbers, genders, date of births, and for many records, bank account numbers. Crazy. Free advised that the numbers were not enough to make a direct debit from a bank. So you got your name, your phone number, your physical address, your date of birth, your gender, and your bank account number. It's a lot of information. That's a lot of information that they got. Okay, and then in May 2025, a coalition of law enforcement agencies took down the criminal infrastructure behind the malware used to launch ransomware attacks in a new phase of Operation Endgame. This followed the first Operation Endgame exercise from last year, with the latest action resulting in 15.3 million victim email addresses being provided by law enforcement to Have I Been Pwned from law enforcement. A further, what's that number there? Further 42.8 million victim passwords were also provided for the Have I Been Pwned password database service. This is crazy. Now, and then you start to think about that in terms of how much data is being collected and stored by these big companies and by these services that are out there. I mean, look at the Coinbase hack that just happened, where they had pictures of people's driver's licenses and passports and identification that really they shouldn't have had to hold on to. Now, the problem here is multiple fold. There's several problems. One is that there have been some laws that have required more identity verification for places like Coinbase, right? And because of the way that those laws are written, combined with the way that sites like Coinbase have processed that has resulted in Coinbase storing pictures of people's ID for a very long period of time. That is a problem. Right? That is an issue that is obviously going to lead to problems. That makes these sites incredibly attractive, seductive almost, targets for hacks and breaches, internal or external. People want that data. That is valuable data. Is it enough data to make transactions? Maybe, but it's pretty close. And anyone who's halfway intelligent can utilize the data. I mean, if we're talking about just this one from this one ISP in France, bank account numbers, genders, phone numbers, date of birth, names, and physical addresses, I'm sorry. If you can't use that to spoof someone's identity and make transactions and whatnot, you're not a very good hacker. That's a lot of data to have. And with some of these sites, like in Coinbase, where if you also have pictures of ID, well, now you've opened up a whole new ballpark of awful misuse that can occur. Because a person, if I have, let's say, all the data that's right there, plus a hash of your password and a picture of your driver's license front and back, oh man, the things I can do. It's horrible. It's horrible, right? So we need a scenario where that sort of data is not being stored. Now, that's where we come back to this age verification law, State Bill 2420, which is realistically making sure that at least related to age verification, that data is not permanently stored by these systems, by these big tech companies. We need more of this. We need more of this, not less. If we're genuinely concerned about big tech companies storing data, the reality is they're not gonna stop on their own. They're not going to. If you go to Microsoft and say, hey, Microsoft, we know you collect a lot of data through Azure and Xbox Live and all the online services and Office 360. And hey, Amazon, we know you collect a ton of data on everybody, but we'd like you to just stop now. They're not gonna. They're just not going to. They're going to go, oh, yes, we understand. And we take your privacy very seriously, TM. And they're not going to stop. And if anything, they're going to increase. Over the last several years, the amount of data that is being stored on each and every one of us by each and every one of these big companies has been escalating dramatically. More services storing data on us, and each of them storing more of our data. You multiply that all together, and that just makes these breaches far too enticing. And combine that with the fact that these systems are becoming increasingly complicated, means that there's an ever-growing number of possible vulnerabilities, not even including the human vulnerabilities. And oh my gosh, of course your photos of your driver's license are going to get hacked and breached and leaked. Of course they are. So what are our options? One, we live with it, and it sucks. Or two, we pass laws that demand that the companies, or make it hard for the companies to keep that data, to reduce the total amount of data footprint that these companies can store about us for any variety of purposes, including age verification purposes or identity verification purposes. Once the identity has been confirmed, once the age has been confirmed, that information should no longer need to be stored, the pictures of your ID and such. So this bill that just got signed in Texas moves us better in that direction of having less of our data on these corporate systems. We need more of this, much, much more, because there are laws right now currently in place, which had an impact on the Coinbase hack, which are requiring certain institutions to keep identification material on file. That's a big problem. That's a very big problem. And I think when a lot of us start to think about age verification systems and the concerns that we have with them, that really puts the finger on the concern right there, right? That's it, right there. Put a tack in that. We don't want pictures of our driver's license, right? And everything else stored indefinitely on someone's server that we have no control over. We don't want that. This age verification bill helps to ensure that less of that is being stored. We need to lobby people, lawmakers, to make more laws and more amendments to laws to make sure that increasingly less of this data is being stored, to make these systems less of an enticing target. And when they do inevitably get hacked, because again, the number of hacks, the hundreds of millions of accounts that have been data breached over the last several years, the Lunduke Journal has been covering this for a while now, mean that inevitably your accounts will be hacked. They will be leaked somehow. They probably already have, and it will happen again this year repeatedly. The odds are just ever in the favor of that happening. So what we need to do is we need to see more laws. And I'm not a guy who advocates for laws. I'm a less laws kind of guy. But the reality is these companies are not going to stop collecting this data and holding on to it unless we tell them they have to delete it with actual teeth behind it, with methods that we can verify the deletion, and where someone can, and that there are significant and multiple legal penalties for the companies failing to delete your personal data, such as photos of your driver's license and things like that. So yeah, so this particular bill, it's a good thing. The X account, Global Affairs, which is for X, it's part of the team over at X. They liked it. They tweeted out, or X posted out, "Thank you, Governor Greg Abbott, for signing State Bill 2420, device-based age verification into law. This is a significant step toward protecting children and strengthening online safety for Texas families. X urges other states and the federal government to follow suit. Louisiana has the opportunity to do so by supporting House Bill 570. Let's get it over the finish line, Louisiana." End quote. So that's Elon Musk's X. They are behind this as well. They like where this is going, and I agree. I wholeheartedly agree. Now, if they'd been presenting these laws without identity protection issues, I think we'd have an entirely different debate on our hands. But considering those specific aspects, it is very difficult to see how someone would object to State Bill 2420 in Texas on the grounds of privacy. That's just not a reasonable objection at this point. Once you read the law, understand the law, and understand how these big tech companies are storing data. So that's where I stand on all of it. I fully support this. My hope is that as additional laws come out about age verification, and there's more that are coming, including another one in Texas that is talking about age restrictions for social media and the like. But as these sorts of laws come online and get debated but get put up for vote, I am hopeful that all of the lawmakers get details, real specific details, like we saw in this bill, into each and every one of them that deal with how do we protect people's privacy better than we currently are without the bill, right? How do we make sure that these companies' databases are less of an interesting target? How do we do that? How do we violate people's privacies less than now? Once we've implemented this into law. Because once that is the case, it's real hard to object to it, unless you really, really, for some weird reason, are like the EFF and you would like little kids to see adult material. Lunduke be spicy. Thank you to all the Lunduke Journal subscribers. If you agree with me on this or disagree, a great place to debate this is over at the Lunduke Journal forum at forum.lunduke.com, which is only available to Lunduke Journal subscribers. And the reason why it's only available to Lunduke Journal subscribers is so that there's not a lot of trolls. It's great. There's no drive-by trolling. It's just a nice community of nerds who are, by and large, just trying to have reasonable, frank, honest, usually very nerdy and happy discussions about everything from retro computing to specific laws like this one. So feel free to go and tell me why I'm wrong about this specific law. And just to point this out to you, though, if you're going to attack my view of supporting this particular Texas law, I'll expect you to have read the law before you attack my views on it. And because if you come at me and are like, but this just violates our privacy, you haven't read the law. The moment you say that, I know you haven't read the law. If the EFF comes out and said this violates privacy, they haven't read the law yet. Read the law. It's a pretty good one. Comparatively, I have complaints. I wish it went further, but it's pretty good. All things by and large. So go to lunduke.com, become a subscriber, and then you can join the forum, and you can yell at me there if you want to. You can also yell at me on X or Substack or Patreon or Facebook or all over the place. There's links. Go to lunduke.com and click links. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, nerds, also nerdettes, across the inner tubes, I do declare, end broadcast.